The Hells Angels biker watched the little girl push aside a loose brick and the hidden papers behind it shredded his past. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. The biker had not planned to stop in that quiet Midwestern town, not even for gas. But the sky was turning the color of old steel, and the road ahead promised heavy rain. He rolled his motorcycle to the curb beside a row of brick buildings that looked older than most of the memories he tried not to touch. The engine ticked as it cooled, a familiar sound that usually calmed him, but tonight it did not. Across the narrow sidewalk, a little girl no older than 8 years old was crouched near the side of a weathered building. Her small fingers dusty as she poked at the wall with the curiosity only children had. He watched from a distance, not out of suspicion, but because something about the moment felt wrong, like the air before a storm breaks. The girl giggled softly when one of the bricks shifted under her hand, revealing a dark gap behind it. She pushed the brick aside with effort, her sneakers scraping against the concrete, and reached into the opening without fear. The biker felt a sudden tightening in his chest, an instinct from a life lived on alert, and he took a step forward. In that instant, she pulled out a bundle of yellowed papers tied with a faded strip of cloth. The cloth slipped free, and the papers fanned out in her hands, fluttering like wounded birds. Even from several feet away, the biker recognized the markings, the stamps, the names printed in a typeface he had prayed he would never see again. His past did not knock politely. It kicked the door down. The world seemed to tilt as memories he had buried under miles of asphalt and years of silence surged back without warning. He remembered smoke, sirens, and a promise he had made to himself never to return to this place, never to dig where the ground was soft. The little girl looked up at him then, her eyes bright and innocent, holding the papers like a prize she did not understand. She smiled, unaware that the man in the leather vest with the Hells Angels patch was standing on the edge of a truth that could tear everything apart. He forced his boots to move, each step heavier than the last, as the wind picked up and carried the faint smell of rain. He knew that whatever was written on those pages had survived fire, time, and silence for a reason. And now, because of one loose brick and a curious child, the life he had rebuilt piece by piece was about to be tested in ways he had never prepared for. The little girl did not understand the significance of the paper she was holding. To her, it was just another forgotten object from the cracks of the old building. She played with it absent-mindedly, unaware of the storm she had unleashed. The biker stood there for a moment, frozen. His heart pounded, and his mind raced through memories he had worked so hard to bury. He glanced at the child in front of him. Her innocence was a stark contrast to the chaos swirling in his chest. He took a deep breath, forcing himself to move. His boots scraped against the concrete as he approached her slowly, each step filled with hesitation. "Hey there," he said, his voice softer than he intended. The girl looked up at him, still holding the papers in her hands. Her big eyes, full of wonder, met his dark, weathered gaze. "What's that?" she asked innocently. The biker swallowed hard, his throat dry. He had to take those papers from her, but how could he explain why? "It's nothing for you to worry about," he said, his tone firm but not unkind. He knelt down in front of her, trying to ignore the weight of the past pressing on him. The girl blinked, sensing his tension but not fully understanding it. "But it's mine now," she protested, clutching the papers tighter. "I found it first." The biker's heart skipped a beat. Of course, she had found it first. It was a simple truth, and yet, in that moment, it felt like the beginning of something much bigger than he could control. "I understand," he said slowly, forcing a smile. "But those papers are very important. You don't want to play with them." She tilted her head slightly, a puzzled expression crossing her face. He could tell she didn't fully grasp the gravity of the situation. The biker reached out, carefully taking the papers from her hand. She didn't resist. For a brief moment, their eyes locked, and in that silence, he realized how close he had come to losing everything. The girl simply watched him, unblinking, her small fingers twitching slightly as he folded the papers carefully, almost reverently. He stood up, clutching them tightly, his body tense as if every muscle was bracing for something he couldn't yet name. The wind picked up, whistling through the empty street, adding to the growing unease in his chest. He took a few steps back, glancing down at the girl one last time. "I'll take care of this now," he said, his voice low, almost to himself. He turned to walk away, but stopped when he heard the girl speak again. "Are you a bad guy?" she asked, her voice small but curious. The question hung in the air, and for a long second, the biker didn't know how to answer. He had spent years trying to forget that part of himself, the part that wore the leather patches of the Hells Angels, the part that had made so many mistakes. He had walked away from that life, but did that mean he was free of it? Did it mean he was any less dangerous? He looked at her again, his gaze softening. "No, I'm not," he said quietly, though he wasn't sure he believed it himself. The girl seemed satisfied with the answer, her eyes lighting up with a smile. "Good," she said, bouncing on her toes. "Because you're nice." The words cut through him, like a blade of hope he had long since stopped believing in. He nodded slowly, turning away, but her innocent trust followed him like a shadow. He stepped back into the street, his heart pounding with a different kind of fear now. Fear of what those papers would mean, and fear of what he might have to do next. He looked down at the papers in his hands. The past was catching up with him, and it wasn't going to let him go so easily. The memories, the secrets, the mistakes, everything he had buried deep was coming back to the surface, and this time, there would be no running from it. The biker stuffed the papers into his jacket, his fingers trembling slightly as he walked toward his motorcycle. He had no choice now. He had to find out what the girl had uncovered. He had to face the truth, no matter how painful it might be. The biker walked down the empty street, his heart pounding in his chest. The small bundle of papers in his jacket felt heavier with every step, as if it were slowly suffocating him. He could still see the little girl's innocent smile, her bright eyes full of trust. She had no idea what she had just unleashed. He had seen things, terrible things, that these papers could bring back to life. But he couldn't turn back now. The past was a ticking time bomb, and he had just set it off. The wind picked up, biting at his skin as he reached his motorcycle. His hands were shaking as he pulled his helmet on, the cold steel of the bike comforting under his fingertips. He needed to find answers, and fast. He revved the engine and pulled out of the parking lot, the bike roaring to life beneath him, cutting through the night like a blade through the darkness. As he rode, his mind raced, recalling the names and faces from his past, the ones he had tried to forget. The Hells Angels, the deals, the betrayals, it all felt like it happened to someone else, someone he no longer recognized. The biker had left that life behind, or so he thought. But now, it seemed like that life was coming for him, dragging him back whether he liked it or not. The papers, the names, they were all tied to a web of secrets he could never escape. He needed to know what they held before it was too late. The bike sped through the empty streets, its headlights slicing through the fog. He knew where to go, where the past had a chance of catching up with him. The warehouse on the outskirts of town was abandoned, but not for long. It had once been his safe haven, a place where deals were made, where things were kept hidden. But it had become a graveyard of memories, a place he no longer visited. Until now. He pulled up in front of the warehouse, the familiar sight of the rusted metal door sending a chill down his spine. The wind howled, rattling the loose windows, as he dismounted the bike and walked toward the entrance. His footsteps echoed in the silence. He pushed the door open slowly, the hinges creaking in protest. Inside, the darkness swallowed him whole. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the papers, the faint glow of the streetlights barely illuminating the yellowed edges. He had to find out what was written on them, but he couldn't shake the feeling that the answers were more dangerous than the questions. He stepped deeper into the warehouse, the smell of old wood and dust thick in the air. His eyes scanned the room, noting the empty shelves and crates that were once filled with secrets. But there was something else now, something that didn't belong. The papers in his hand trembled as he approached a rusted filing cabinet. He slid open the drawer, careful not to make a sound, and placed the papers inside. As he shut the drawer, the noise of a distant car alarm echoed through the warehouse. His instincts kicked in, and he turned to look toward the back of the room. There, standing in the shadows, was a figure, a man with a face he'd never hoped to see again. The biker's heart skipped a beat. "I knew you'd come back," the man said, his voice low and gravelly. The biker's hand instinctively went to the leather jacket he always wore, where a gun once rested. But tonight, he wasn't carrying one. Tonight, he was just a man trying to bury a past he couldn't escape. "You shouldn't have come here," the biker said, his voice steady, though his chest was tight with a fear he hadn't felt in years. "You know why I'm here," the man replied, stepping into the light. His face was familiar, but it had been so long since the biker had seen him. His name was Travis, a man from the past who had once been like family. But the biker knew better than to trust him now. "Those papers," Travis said, nodding toward the drawer. "You have no idea what you found, do you?" The biker felt a wave of dread wash over him. He had always known that one day his past would catch up to him, but he hadn't expected it to happen like this, so suddenly, so violently. "What do you want?" the biker asked, his jaw clenched. "What's in those papers?" Travis smiled, a cold, dangerous grin. "What's in them is everything you've been running from." The biker's mind raced as he took a step back, his eyes flicking to the door. He had to get out of here. But as he turned to leave, Travis's voice stopped him cold. "You think you can just walk away from this?" the man asked. "From what you did?" "From what we did." The biker's hand tightened into a fist, the memories rushing back. He had been part of something much bigger than he realized. And now, those ghosts were coming home to roost. He had no choice but to face them. Face the man who once called him brother, and the past that had never truly let him go. The biker stood frozen, his heart racing as Travis stepped out from the shadows, his grin still cold and calculated. The sound of the distant car alarm faded into the background as the two men locked eyes, the weight of the past hanging between them like a thick fog. The biker could feel the tension tightening in his chest, but there was no turning back now. "You really thought you could just walk away from all this?" Travis's voice was low, like a growl, each word dripping with contempt. The biker clenched his fists, feeling the familiar rush of anger bubbling up from deep inside. But he kept his calm, the years of living on the edge teaching him how to mask his emotions. "What do you want, Travis?" The question hung in the air, heavy with unspoken history. Travis took a step closer, his boots echoing in the silent warehouse. "You know exactly what I want," he said, his voice dropping even lower. "The papers. You don't understand what's at stake here. You never did." The biker's mind raced, but his expression remained unreadable. He couldn't let Travis see how much this situation was affecting him. "You're right about one thing," the biker said, his voice steady. "I didn't understand it then, and I don't understand it now. But I'm not going back to that life." Travis's face twisted into a sneer. "You don't get to walk away. Not after everything we did. Those papers are the key to everything. You know what's inside them, and you know it's not just some old records." The biker's stomach churned. He had always known that one day his past would catch up with him. But he hadn't expected it to be like this, with the ghost of someone he once called brother standing in front of him, demanding answers he didn't have. "I don't care what's in them," the biker replied, his voice hardening. "I'm done with all of this." Travis's laugh was dark and humorless. "You think you're done? You think you can just walk away after everything you've done?" The biker didn't respond. Instead, he glanced at the door, weighing his options. He couldn't stay here. He couldn't let Travis drag him back into that world. But he also couldn't leave without knowing the full truth. The papers, what were they really? What had they been hiding for all these years? He turned back to Travis, his jaw clenched. "If you want them so badly, take them," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But know this, you're not getting me back." Travis's eyes narrowed as he studied the biker for a long moment, a cold calculation in his gaze. "You really think it's that easy?" he asked. "You think I'm just going to let you walk away and forget about all of this?" The biker's hand instinctively went to his jacket, but he stopped himself. "No weapons. Not tonight. I'm done running," the biker said, his voice calm but firm. "And I'm not going to let you drag me back into your mess." Travis's gaze hardened, his hands balling into fists. "You really don't get it, do you? This isn't just about you. It's about everything. The Hell's Angels. The deals. The betrayals. It's all coming to a head, and you're at the center of it." The biker took a step back, his heart pounding. "I didn't want any of this," he muttered, more to himself than to Travis. "I just wanted to get away. Start over. And you think you can? You think you can just walk away from your past like it never happened?" Travis took another step forward, closing the gap between them. The past is never really gone, my friend. It's always lurking, waiting for the right moment to drag you back in. The biker felt a rush of panic. The last thing he wanted was to be pulled back into that life. But Travis was right. His past was like a shadow, always trailing behind him, always threatening to consume him. He took a deep breath, trying to steady his racing heart. So what now? The words left his mouth before he could stop them. What happens next? Travis smiled, a smile that was anything but reassuring. Now, we finish what we started. He reached into his jacket, pulling out a folded piece of paper. This is just the beginning, he said, holding it out to the biker. The biker took it, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on him. He unfolded the paper slowly, scanning the contents with a sinking feeling in his gut. The names, the dates, the details. It was all there, everything he had tried to forget. His eyes lingered on the last line, the one that made his stomach twist. It was a name he had never expected to see again. His own. The realization hit him like a ton of bricks. This was bigger than just the papers. This was about his entire life, the things he had tried to escape, the people he had left behind. And now, there was no escaping it. He was right back in the middle of it all. The biker stood in the dim light of the warehouse, holding the paper in his hand, the weight of the past pressing down on him harder than ever. The words on the page burned in his mind, the names, the dates, the memories he had long since buried. All of it had come rushing back in an instant. His own name was at the bottom of the page, scrawled in black ink, a reminder of a past he had hoped would stay forgotten. He clenched the paper tightly, his knuckles white from the pressure. "What is this, Travis?" he asked, his voice tight with disbelief. Travis smiled, a cold, calculated grin that sent a shiver down the biker's spine. "You already know what it is," he said, his tone low and menacing. "This is the beginning of the end, my friend. You thought you could just walk away, but you can't. Not from this. Not from what we built." The biker took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. "I walked away from the Hell's Angels, Travis. That life is over." Travis stepped closer, the smile never leaving his face. "You may have walked away, but that doesn't mean they'll let you go. You're in deeper than you realize. You always were." The biker's heart raced, but he refused to show fear. He had walked away from the club, from everything. But now, standing in front of him, was a ghost from that past, a reminder that some things never let go. "What do you want from me?" he asked, his voice steady despite the pounding in his chest. Travis chuckled, the sound dark and hollow. "I want you to remember who you really are. The biker who helped build this empire. The one who made things happen when no one else would. You can't run from that, no matter how hard you try." The biker's mind flashed back to those days, the deals, the fights, the power he had once wielded. He had been someone, feared and respected, but that life had come at a cost. "I don't owe you anything," the biker said, his voice hardening. "I don't owe anyone anything." Travis's expression darkened, the smile slipping from his face. "You think it's that simple? You think you can just walk away and forget about everything?" The biker's jaw tightened, his hands still gripping the paper, now crumpled and shaking. He had been trying to forget, trying to live a life without the constant threat of the past looming over him. But he realized now that it was never going to be that easy. "What do you want me to do?" he asked, his voice low. "Come back? Join the club again?" Travis's eyes narrowed, and he took another step forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. "No, it's too late for that. But you can't escape what you've done. The club is still out there, and they know you've got the papers. They'll be coming for you. They'll be coming for all of us." The biker's heart skipped a beat. He had known this was coming, but hearing it spoken out loud made it feel all too real. The past wasn't done with him yet, and neither were the people he had once called brothers. "I don't want any part of this anymore," he said, his voice firm. "I'm done." Travis's laugh was dark, filled with bitterness. "You can't just say that. You can't just walk away from everything we built. You're tied to it whether you like it or not." The biker turned away, his mind racing. He needed to leave, get as far away from here as possible. But where could he go? The past would follow him wherever he went, always lurking in the shadows, waiting to drag him back. As he walked toward the door, Travis's voice called after him. "You can run, but you can't hide. The club is already on its way." The biker paused, his hand resting on the doorframe. He knew Travis was right. There was no running from this, not anymore. "Then let them come," he muttered under his breath. He pushed the door open and stepped into the night, the cold air hitting him like a slap to the face. He had been trying to escape this life for so long, but now, as he looked out into the dark, he realized that he could never truly escape the Hell's Angels. He could only hope to survive it. He mounted his bike and revved the engine, the roar of the motorcycle cutting through the silence of the night. The road ahead was uncertain, but it was the only road he could take now. As he sped down the street, the headlights of his bike illuminating the darkness, he knew one thing for sure. The past had caught up with him, and there was no turning back. The biker rode through the outskirts of town with the engine humming steady beneath him, the warehouse shrinking behind him as the night swallowed the road. His mind refused to slow down. The paper Travis had shown him played on repeat in his thoughts like a warning siren that would not shut off. Names from the past collided with faces he had tried to forget, men who had sworn loyalty and others who had sworn revenge. Every mile carried him farther from the warehouse, but closer to a truth he could no longer deny. He turned off the main road and followed a narrow stretch of cracked asphalt that led toward an abandoned industrial yard near the river. It was a place he once used when he needed to disappear for a few hours or a few days, back when hiding came as naturally as breathing. He killed the engine and let the silence settle around him, broken only by the distant sound of water moving through the dark. He removed his helmet and ran a hand over his face, feeling the roughness of his beard and the weight of exhaustion. This was supposed to be a clean break. Years ago he had walked away from the club, from the violence, from the constant pressure to prove himself every day. He had believed that time and distance could erase what he had done. Now he knew better. The past did not stay buried just because you asked it to. He reached into his jacket and pulled out the folded paper again, smoothing it against the gas tank so he could read it under the weak glow of a flickering yard light. The details were clearer now. Dates lined up with events he remembered all too well. Shipments that were never supposed to exist. Money that vanished without explanation. And woven through all of it was his role, not as a follower, but as a man who had made decisions that changed other lives forever. His stomach tightened as he realized the truth. The papers were not just records. They were leverage. Whoever controlled them could control everyone named on those pages. That included Travis. That included men still wearing club colors. And that included him. A sudden sound made his head snap up. Tires on gravel. Slow. Deliberate. He stood and moved his bike deeper into the shadows, instincts from his old life rising fast. A dark sedan rolled into the yard and stopped several yards away. The engine idled for a moment before shutting off. Two doors opened. Two men stepped out, their movements calm and practiced. They were not local. Their jackets were clean. Their posture told him they were used to being obeyed. One of them spoke, his voice carrying easily through the night, saying they knew he had the papers and that running would only make things worse. The biker felt a cold clarity settle over him. Travis had not been bluffing. Word had already spread. The papers were worth too much to ignore. He stepped forward into the light, keeping his hands visible, his expression unreadable. He did not ask questions. He did not challenge them. He listened as they explained that powerful people wanted what he had found, people who did not care about old loyalties or second chances. They offered him a deal without calling it one. Hand over the papers and walk away alive. Refuse and become a problem that would be solved quickly. The biker looked past them toward the dark river, thinking of the little girl and her smile, of how easily innocence could brush against something dangerous without even knowing it. He thought about the life he had been trying to build, quiet and unremarkable, and how fragile it suddenly felt. He realized then that this was not just about survival. It was about responsibility. Those papers carried truth, and truth had a cost. He told the men he needed time. He said the papers were hidden and not easy to reach. It was not a lie, but not the whole truth either. One of the men warned him that time was something he did not have much of. They left as calmly as they arrived, the sedan disappearing back onto the road. Alone again, the biker exhaled slowly. The noose was tightening. Multiple sides were closing in, and each one wanted something different from him. For the first time in years, he understood that walking away was no longer an option. Whatever came next would force him to choose between protecting himself and exposing a past that could destroy far more than his own life. He swung his leg over the bike and started the engine, eyes fixed on the road ahead. Somewhere in this town, answers waited, and time was running out. The biker's mind was racing as he sped down the highway, the rumble of his motorcycle the only sound that kept him company. His pulse was still quick from the encounter with the two men earlier, but now, as the road stretched ahead, a new kind of clarity began to take hold. He had been running from his past for years, but now it was clear, he wasn't just running away. He was running out of time. As he pushed the bike harder, his mind wandered back to the small warehouse, to the two men and their cryptic warnings. They were right about one thing. He didn't have much time. They would be watching him, waiting for him to make a mistake, to slip up. They wouldn't give him another chance. He knew he had to act fast. But what could he do? What had these papers really uncovered? He had already been down this road before, and it led to a dead end. But this time was different. He wasn't alone. The thought hit him like a slap to the face. He had seen the fear in the little girl's eyes earlier, the way she had clutched the papers like they were her own little treasure. She had no idea what she had found, no idea how much danger it had brought her. He couldn't let her get caught in this mess. He needed to protect her. He needed to get to the truth, no matter what it took. His destination was clear now, even though he wasn't sure where the answers would lead. He made a sharp turn, pulling the bike into a small gas station off the main road. The bright fluorescent lights inside flickered as he dismounted, his boots hitting the concrete with a sense of purpose. Inside, the attendant barely looked up, too busy with his phone to care about the biker's presence. The biker walked to the back of the store and grabbed a cold bottle of water. His hand was still shaking slightly from the adrenaline, but he tried to steady himself as he unscrewed the cap and took a deep drink. The cool water helped clear his head, but not enough. He still didn't know what he was supposed to do next. He couldn't let the papers fall into the wrong hands, but he couldn't trust anyone, either. The club's reach was too wide, too dangerous. He had left that life behind, but it didn't matter now. His past had caught up with him, and the only thing left to do was deal with it head-on. He stepped back outside, letting the cool night air hit his face. His thoughts were a storm of confusion and urgency, but there was one thing he knew for sure. He had to find out what those papers meant. It wasn't just about him anymore. It was about protecting the people he cared about. The little girl, the ones still in the dark, the ones who didn't deserve to be dragged into this war. His hands clenched into fists as he looked down at the small scrap of paper in his jacket. It wasn't just a record. It was a trigger, a beacon that had drawn him back into the world he thought he had escaped. He couldn't afford to waste time. He couldn't afford to wait any longer. His motorcycle roared to life as he swung his leg over the bike, the engine's sound drowning out everything else. He needed answers, and he needed them fast. The road ahead was long, but it was the only one that could lead him to the truth. He gunned the throttle, the wind rushing past him as the world blurred in his peripheral vision. He wasn't sure where he was headed, but he knew one thing. He couldn't keep running anymore. The past would always follow him, but this time, he was going to take control of it. The road ahead felt endless, but there was no turning back now. The pieces of his past were scattered all around him, and it was only a matter of time before he pieced them all together. And when he did, everything would change. The truth had a way of coming out, no matter how hard you tried to bury it. But this time, he was ready for whatever came next. The club, the secrets, the betrayal, they were all coming for him. But he wasn't going down without a fight. Not again. The biker's grip tightened around the handlebars as the road stretched out before him, the engine's roar steady beneath him. His mind, though, was far from steady. The encounter with the two men had rattled him more than he had admitted, but the bigger problem was still ahead. He had the papers. He had the key to a puzzle that could ruin everything he had worked for. The weight of them in his jacket was unbearable now. More than just paper, they were a chain. He turned off the main highway, heading deeper into the countryside. The trees lining the road were thick, their shadows stretching long as the sun began to set. It was the kind of place where people didn't ask questions, a perfect place to hide for a while. As he approached a secluded gas station, he slowed, looking for signs of life. The place was old, the neon sign flickering weakly, but there was a car parked outside. He pulled up beside the pump and dismounted, not bothering to remove his helmet yet. The attendant, a young guy in his 20s, gave him a cursory glance but didn't say anything. The biker walked over to the payphone at the back of the station. He had to make a call. His hand hovered over the receiver as he thought for a moment. then dialed the number he hadn't called in years. The line rang twice before a voice answered. This better be good. It was the voice of a man he hadn't spoken to in a long time, not since he'd walked away from the Hells Angels. I need information, the biker said quietly, his eyes scanning the empty parking lot. About a certain file. I need to know what's in it. There was a pause on the other end, the sound of someone shifting. You know what's in it, the voice replied, cold and sharp. The question is, do you really want to know? The biker's jaw tightened, but he didn't hesitate. I need to know, he said again, his voice firmer now. It's not just about me anymore. The line went silent for a long moment, and then the voice spoke again, slower this time. You're playing a dangerous game. You always were. Fine. I'll get you the answers, but you won't like them. And when this is over, you'll wish you hadn't asked. The biker gripped the phone harder, a flicker of frustration flashing across his face. I don't have a choice. That's the problem, the voice said, almost sympathetically. You've never had a choice. The call ended abruptly, leaving the biker standing alone with only the sound of the wind to keep him company. He let out a breath, trying to shake off the sense of dread that had settled over him. The wheels were already in motion, and there was no turning back now. He walked back to his bike, the weight of the situation hanging heavily on his shoulders. The road ahead was long, and he didn't know where it would take him. But he knew one thing for sure. He was about to find out just how deep the rabbit hole went. He started the bike and revved the engine, the growl of the motorcycle breaking the stillness of the evening. The road ahead blurred as he sped down it, the fading light of the day behind him and the unknown darkness ahead. His thoughts were a storm, his mind racing as fast as the bike beneath him. The past was a shadow at his back, but the future was a vast, terrifying unknown. The truth, he knew, was waiting for him somewhere ahead, and it wasn't going to be pretty. He couldn't run anymore. The papers, the deal with Travis, the life he had left behind, they were all part of a bigger picture, a picture that was beginning to make itself clear. And it was not the kind of picture he had hoped to see. He had been trying to outrun his demons, but they were catching up to him faster than he had expected. As the darkness settled around him, he realized that no matter how fast he rode, no matter how far he went, the past would always follow. The only thing he could do now was face it. The road twisted ahead, narrowing as the trees closed in around him. The biker's mind sharpened. He was getting close. But to what, he didn't know. All he could do was keep riding, keep pushing forward, hoping that when the truth finally hit, he would be ready for it. The biker's thoughts were like the speeding road beneath him, fast, unpredictable, and heading into the unknown. His mind replayed everything that had happened in the past few days. The papers, the threat, the call with the man who had once been his ally but now seemed like an enemy. He could feel the weight of the world pressing down on him, the burden of secrets and choices he had made long ago, choices that had led him to this very moment. The wind hit him like a physical force as he pushed the motorcycle faster, the engine roaring with power. It was his escape, his way of feeling like he could outrun it all. But deep down, he knew he couldn't outrun the truth. He had taken on a debt when he entered the Hells Angels, and now it seemed like it was time to pay. The bike rumbled steadily as the darkness of the countryside swallowed him whole. The streetlights grew fewer, the road twisting like a serpent through trees and empty fields. He turned onto a smaller road, heading toward a cabin on the outskirts of town, a place he had not visited in years. This was where he had first started, where he had made the first real choices that had led him into the world of the Hells Angels. He was drawn to it now, not out of nostalgia, but out of a sense of needing to understand. He needed answers. His hands tightened on the handlebars as he approached the cabin. The dim lights shining through the windows were familiar, and yet, it felt like a different place now, one he had left behind. He parked the bike outside and dismounted, the gravel crunching under his boots. He stood there for a moment, his breath visible in the cold night air, staring at the cabin. It was like looking at a ghost, a part of his past that had never truly left. He had to know what was waiting inside. Slowly, he walked toward the door, his hand brushing against the rough wood of the frame as if touching the memories of what had been. He knocked twice, the sound echoing in the night. There was a long pause before the door creaked open, revealing an older man with a weary face, eyes that had seen too much. The biker didn't say anything at first, just looked at the man, his heart pounding in his chest. "You came back," the man said, his voice heavy with years of regret and understanding. The biker nodded, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. The cabin smelled of dust and old wood, but there was a warmth to it, like something had been kept alive here despite the years of neglect. I need to know, the biker said, his voice low. What happened to the papers? What's the real story? The man sighed, motioning for the biker to sit at the worn wooden table. He pulled out a faded box from under the table, covered in dust. It was the kind of box that held memories, secrets, things that should have been left untouched. The man opened the box slowly, revealing stacks of old papers and photographs. You don't know the whole story, the man said, looking at the biker. You never did. The biker leaned forward, his eyes scanning the papers as the man spoke. The Hells Angels weren't just about bikes or brotherhood. The man continued, his voice growing softer. It was always about control. The papers you found, they're part of something much bigger. Things that were never supposed to see the light of day. The biker felt his stomach churn as he looked at the documents. It wasn't just about him anymore. It was about the people in these photos, the names written down, the decisions that had shaped their lives. Who's behind this? The biker asked, his voice steady. But there was a tremor in his chest. The man's face hardened. It's not just the club, he said, his eyes meeting the biker's with a knowing look. There are people in power, people you wouldn't even recognize. The papers? They're evidence of deals that go beyond what you think you know. Deals that were made in the dark, and now everyone's trying to cover their tracks. The biker sat back in his chair, the weight of the information sinking in. It was too much. The people who had once been his family had turned into something unrecognizable, something dangerous. And the deeper he dug, the more he realized he might not be able to get out of it. What happens now? The biker asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The man looked at him, his expression unreadable. Now, he said, you make your choice. You walk away, or you face the consequences of everything that's been done. The biker stood up slowly, his mind spinning with everything he had just learned. He turned toward the door, his body tense, knowing that the choice he made in the next few hours would determine everything. There was no going back, and no escaping the past. As he stepped outside, the weight of the world on his shoulders, he heard the roar of a motorcycle in the distance. It was closer now, coming for him, and he realized that whatever came next, the road ahead was not going to be easy. The biker didn't wait for the sound of the approaching motorcycles to get any closer. His instincts screamed at him to run, but he had no place left to go. The warehouse behind him, the road ahead, all seemed to close in. The heavy air, thick with impending danger, weighed down on him as he stepped away from the cabin, his boots crunching on the dirt path. The man's words echoed in his mind, the choice he had to make. The air was colder now, the sky painted in deep, threatening shades of purple and blue. He knew that within the next few minutes, he would either be stepping into a world of chaos or he would be buried under the weight of his own decisions. A loud engine roared to life in the distance, the sound unmistakable. It was them. His hand instinctively went to his jacket, brushing over the spot where his gun should have been. But it wasn't there. He had left it at the cabin, the very thing he thought he didn't need anymore. The thought that had been gnawing at him all night became clear now. He was unprepared. He had walked right into this, trusting that he could face the storm without a shield. As the bike engine drew closer, he began to move, his body tense but steady. He couldn't afford to let fear guide his steps. He had faced worse before. The motorcycles appeared out of the darkness, their lights cutting through the night like blades. The biker watched them approach, his heart thudding in his chest. They didn't stop. They rolled right up to the edge of the property and dismounted, each man as silent and imposing as the last. The biker recognized their jackets. Hell's Angels, unmistakable. These weren't just some random members. These were the serious ones. His stomach dropped, the familiar pang of dread creeping up his spine. They were coming for him. They didn't speak at first, just stood there, watching him, their postures stiff with authority. Then, one of them stepped forward, a man he knew well from his past. Thought you could walk away, huh? The man said, his voice gravelly, familiar. It was Mark, a figure from the biker's early years with the club, someone he had once trusted. The biker's jaw tightened, but he kept his distance. He didn't want to show weakness. I'm not your problem anymore, Mark. The biker replied, his voice firm. Mark chuckled darkly, taking another step closer. That's where you're wrong, brother. You're always going to be our problem. You think you can just leave and forget everything we did together? That's not how it works. The biker stood tall, resisting the urge to retreat. I don't owe you anything. I left that life behind. That life doesn't leave you, you idiot, Mark snapped. You can leave the club, but the club doesn't leave you. You're too deep in this, and now those papers you're holding are going to bury you. You should have stayed gone, but you didn't. Now you'll pay for that. The biker felt his chest tighten, his mind racing. The truth was that Mark was right. He hadn't been able to run far enough. His past had caught up with him, and now he was tangled in a mess that was bigger than he ever realized. What do you want from me? The biker's voice barely held back the anger boiling inside him. Mark's eyes gleamed coldly. We want what's ours. Those papers. Give them to me, and we'll let you go. Keep fighting, and we'll make sure you regret it. The tension hung heavy between them, the night eerily silent except for the sound of the wind rustling the trees. The biker's fingers curled into fists, but he didn't move. He didn't want to make the first move, didn't want to fight unless it was his last option. You think I'm going to hand over those papers just like that? He asked, a bitter laugh escaping his lips. Mark smiled, a predatory grin that made the biker's blood run cold. I think you'll do what you have to do. You've got a lot of people to answer for, and it's not just us. Those papers are the key to a lot more than you realize. The biker's eyes narrowed. What do you mean? You're in over your head, old man, Mark said, his voice low. The club isn't the only one looking for those papers. There are people much bigger than us who want them, and they don't care about loyalty. You're either going to help us, or you're going to die trying to protect them. The biker's mind raced, trying to piece together what he was hearing. Bigger than the club? Who the hell could be more dangerous than them? He hadn't known what he was getting into when he picked up those papers, but now it was clear. He had stirred up something that would tear everything apart. His eyes flicked back to the men around Mark. They were standing still, waiting. The biker felt his pulse pounding in his ears. I'll give you the papers, he said, his voice steady, even though his heart was hammering. But you have to promise me something. Mark's eyebrows rose. What's that? You let the little girl go? She has nothing to do with this. Mark chuckled, stepping closer. You really care about her, don't you? All right, I'll make a deal with you. You give us what we want, and she walks away. But if you try anything, I won't be so merciful. The biker knew he had no choice. He couldn't let anyone else get caught in this. His life was already over, but he would protect the innocent as best as he could. He reached into his jacket, pulling out the papers, and held them out to Mark. Take them, but if you hurt her, I swear I'll make you regret it. Mark's hand closed around the papers, and the biker watched him carefully. Mark's eyes never left him as he said, You're making the right choice. The biker stood his ground, but deep inside, he knew this wasn't over. Whatever happened next, he would be forced to face everything he had tried to escape. The storm was coming, and there was no running from it now. The moment Mark took the papers and turned away, the biker felt a hollow calm settle in his chest, the kind that came only after a decision that could not be undone. The motorcycles started one by one, their engines growling low and steady as the men mounted up. Mark gave him one last look, not of gratitude or respect, but of ownership, as if the biker were still something the club could claim. Then they were gone, taillights fading into the dark road, leaving the night suddenly quiet again. The biker stood alone near the cabin, the cold air biting at his skin, realizing how exposed he truly was now. He had given up the papers, but he had not given up the truth. He knew copies existed. He knew the old man inside the cabin had more than he admitted. And he knew that Mark and the club would not stop just because they had taken the originals. He walked back inside the cabin, every step heavy with purpose. The older man looked up from the table, reading the biker's face before a single word was spoken. The biker told him the papers were gone. He told him the club had them now. The older man closed his eyes slowly, as if he had expected this outcome all along. Then he reached beneath the floorboard near the fireplace and pulled out a thin metal case, worn and scratched with age. Inside were copies of everything, carefully preserved. The biker understood then that the loose brick and the papers behind it were only the surface of something much deeper. The older man explained that years ago, when things inside the club began to rot from the inside, some members tried to protect themselves by creating records, proof of deals that should never have existed. The biker had been one of the names used to move things quietly, Because people trusted him. He had never seen the full picture at the time. Now the full picture was staring back at him. The biker felt a surge of anger and shame twist together in his gut. He had believed he was just surviving back then. In truth, he had helped build the machine that was now hunting him. Outside, another engine sound approached, slower this time, cautious. The biker moved to the window and saw a single motorcycle stop near the road. A man removed his helmet and raised his hands to show he was alone. It was Travis. The biker stepped outside, keeping distance but listening. Travis told him Mark had not told the whole truth. The papers were only part of the leverage. There were digital copies stored in places even the club could not easily reach. People outside the biker world were already circling, people with badges and people without them. Travis admitted he had been trying to save himself. Now he wanted out. He wanted to burn the whole thing down before it burned them all. The biker listened in silence, feeling the weight of choice pressing down again. This was the moment the older man had warned him about. Walk away and let the past consume others, or stand up and face consequences that would follow him for the rest of his life. He thought of the little girl, of how easily innocence had brushed against danger because adults had failed to clean up their messes. He realized then that this was not about clearing his name. It was about stopping the damage from spreading further. He told Travis he would help, but not for money, not for protection, and not for revenge. He would help only if the truth went where it belonged and the innocent stayed untouched. Travis agreed, knowing he had little power left to negotiate. The biker returned inside, took the metal case, and felt a strange sense of relief mixed with fear. The path ahead was clear now, even if it was dangerous. He would not run again. He would not hide behind silence. He would choose to confront what he had helped create. As the first hint of dawn crept across the sky, the biker stepped outside, mounted his motorcycle, and started the engine. This was no longer about survival alone. It was about responsibility. And for the first time in many years, he was ready to face whatever followed. The biker sped down the road, the engine's roar vibrating through his body, drowning out the thoughts that had been chasing him. The world seemed to blur as he shifted into higher gears, the night air cutting through his jacket. He wasn't sure how long he had been driving, an hour, maybe two, but the need to outrun the consequences of his decisions pushed him forward. Travis had left him with more questions than answers, but one thing was clear. The storm was coming, and it wasn't just the club. There were others, people who played the game in ways he couldn't even imagine. He had made a choice to face the past, but now he was facing a future he wasn't prepared for. The papers were just the beginning. The real danger lay in what came next. As the headlights of his bike cut through the darkness, he recalled the conversation he had with Travis earlier. "The truth is bigger than all of us," Travis had said, his voice full of desperation. "You think it's just about the papers? It's about control. It's about power. And you've already made a mistake by getting involved." The biker couldn't shake the feeling that he had stepped into something much deeper than he could handle. The truth had a way of coming out when it was least expected, and the more he uncovered, the more he realized how much of it he still didn't understand. His eyes narrowed as he approached a small town, the roads now familiar, the faces of the past threatening to rise up from the shadows. He slowed down as he entered the area, pulling into a quiet street, the kind that felt abandoned even in the daylight. He parked his bike in a dimly lit alley and stepped off, his boots hitting the pavement with a sharp echo. The weight of the night hung heavily on him, the chill in the air seeming to reach deep inside him. He hadn't realized how much he needed a moment to breathe, to just stop running. As he approached a small diner tucked away in the corner, the flickering neon sign casting a pale glow on the empty street, he felt the heaviness of what was about to happen. Inside, the waitress behind the counter looked up as he entered, her expression neutral, but she had seen enough in her years to know when trouble walked in. "Coffee?" she asked without missing a beat, already moving toward the pot. "Yeah," the biker replied, his voice low. He needed something to steady himself. His mind had been racing with every possible outcome of the situation, but none of them felt like a clear path. The waitress set a mug in front of him, her movements deliberate. "You're a long way from home," she said, her eyes lingering on his worn leather jacket and the patches on his back. "Just passing through," he muttered, taking a slow sip from the mug. The warmth of the coffee was welcome, but it did little to ease the cold knot in his stomach. His mind kept drifting back to the decision he had made in the warehouse, the moment he had given Mark the papers. He had thought it would end the pursuit, but now he knew that it had only made things more complicated. The bike was gone, the trail was cold, and there was no turning back. He could feel the weight of what was coming. His mind flashed to the little girl, her innocent face as she had handed him the papers. He had promised himself he would protect her, but he wondered now if he had made things worse for her, too. He had no idea how deep the rabbit hole went, but he knew one thing for certain. The people behind this were not the type to let go easily. The door opened with a jingle, and a man stepped inside, his eyes scanning the diner before they landed on the biker. The man's eyes were cold, calculating, and the biker instantly knew this was no coincidence. He hadn't come here for coffee. The man's hand brushed the side of his jacket as he moved toward the counter, and the biker's muscles tensed. "I'm not here for trouble," the man said, his voice low but firm. The biker didn't respond. Instead, he kept his eyes on the man, studying him for any sign of threat. The man took a seat at the counter, not looking at him directly, but making sure the biker could see him. "You've stirred up something you don't understand," the man continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "You took the papers. Now you have a decision to make." The biker's hand tightened around the coffee mug. He knew exactly what this was about. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice steady, though the adrenaline was beginning to surge in his veins. "It's not about what we want," the man replied. "It's about what you can offer us in return. You've got leverage now. You've got the keys to something bigger than you realize. The papers, they're just a piece of the puzzle. The question is, what are you going to do with it?" The biker's jaw clenched. He had always known there was more to the story, but this was beyond anything he had imagined. He had no choice but to play along. The man's eyes locked onto his. "You'll have to decide soon, whether you help us or we help you disappear." The biker stood, the air in the diner suddenly too thick. The man didn't move, but the threat was clear. The biker wasn't sure if the man was bluffing, but he didn't want to find out. He turned, leaving the diner with the weight of his decisions pressing harder than ever. His bike was still parked outside, but the road ahead was no longer a simple ride. It was a test, and he had no idea how it was going to end. The biker rode through the quiet streets, his mind racing with the gravity of the choices ahead. The diner and the strange man had given him no real answers, only more questions, and a deeper sense of dread. He had never been a man to back down, but this was different. The past had come for him, dragged him back into a life he had tried to forget. And now, it seemed like no matter what he did, he couldn't escape it. The engine of the bike hummed beneath him, a constant reminder that he was still moving forward. But for how much longer? He had promised himself that he was done with the Hells Angels, that he was out of that life. But the people who ran. The show didn't let anyone leave easily. As the biker passed through the outskirts of town, his thoughts turned to the little girl. He couldn't shake the image of her face, her innocent smile, unaware of the storm that was brewing because of a simple act of curiosity. He had tried to protect her, tried to keep her safe, but now he was beginning to wonder if he had made things worse. What had the papers really uncovered? What kind of mess had he gotten them both into? His phone buzzed in his pocket, snapping him out of his thoughts. He pulled over to the side of the road, the phone screen lighting up with an unknown number. His gut twisted as he answered. "Hello," he said, his voice low. "We need to talk," came the voice on the other end, familiar but distant. It was Travis. "I'm listening," the biker replied, keeping his voice steady despite the unease creeping up his spine. "You don't understand what you've gotten yourself into," Travis continued, his voice strained. "The people who want those papers," the biker cut him off, his frustration rising. "I already know who they are," he snapped. "What do you want from me?" "It's not just about the papers anymore," Travis said, his voice lowering. "It's about everything. The people you've crossed, the people you've worked for, they're coming for you. And it's not just the club. There's more going on than you realize. Bigger players are involved now. If you don't act fast, everything you've built." "What do you mean, bigger players?" The biker's heart raced. "Who else is involved?" "You don't know what you're dealing with," Travis said urgently. "There's more at stake here than just us. You've got to make a choice. Run or fight." The biker stood still, the weight of the words sinking in. There was no running from this anymore. He had to face it head on, for better or worse. "I'll fight," he said, his voice unwavering. "Tell me what to do. You need to get out of there. Now, go to the old safe house on the edge of the city. You'll find the answers there. But don't trust anyone. Not even me." The line went dead. The biker stood in silence for a moment, trying to process the conversation. He had no time to waste. He started his bike and gunned the throttle, the engine growling to life as he sped off into the night. The road ahead was long, but he had no choice. He needed answers, and he needed them fast. The city loomed ahead, the flickering lights of the skyline casting shadows over the streets. He didn't know who was hunting him or what they wanted, but he knew that whatever was waiting for him at the safe house would be the key to everything. The road seemed endless, and with each passing mile, the biker's heart pounded faster. He could feel the weight of the past pressing in on him, the knowledge that everything was closing in. The people he had betrayed, the lives he had touched, all of it was coming back to haunt him. As he approached the safe house, his stomach twisted with dread. The place had been a refuge once, a place to disappear and lick wounds. But now, it felt like a trap. He parked the bike in the dark alley behind the building, his eyes scanning the area for any sign of movement. The street was empty, eerily silent, but he didn't trust the quiet. He moved quickly toward the entrance, every sense alert, expecting someone, or something, to jump out at him. He reached the door and paused, his hand on the knob. The familiar click of a lock disengaging made him freeze. The door creaked open, revealing a figure standing inside, waiting for him. It was a woman, her face shadowed by the dim light, but there was no mistaking the look in her eyes. She was no stranger. "I knew you'd come," she said, her voice soft but filled with certainty. The biker's heart skipped a beat. He didn't recognize her at first, but as she stepped into the light, the memories came flooding back. Sarah, his old partner, the woman he had trusted, the woman who had been pulled into this life by him. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice tinged with disbelief. "I came to help," Sarah said, stepping closer. "But I'm afraid you've made a lot of mistakes, and it's going to cost us both." The biker felt a knot form in his stomach as he watched her. She wasn't here by accident. She had been waiting for him, and now, he had no choice but to trust her. But deep down he knew this was the last place he should be. The game had changed, and there was no turning back now. The door shut behind him with a quiet thud, and for the first time in a long while, he allowed himself to feel the weight of the choices he had made. He had walked into a storm, and the only way out was through it.